The third and the very important role of the constitution is limits the powers of the government. When we say limits the power of the government, let us take the example of India. We choose our representatives, and these representatives sit in the parliament and make a law which, according to me, you, or anyone in the community, may feel that they are arbitrary, or they are against the will of the people, or they are unfair or unjust. Because we can take the examples like government prohibits you from practicing your religion, government prohibits the certain color people to enter certain churches. Maybe government restricts the publication and circulation of a book that you may like to read, or government may prohibit listening to the song that you like. Government may certainly put certain restrictions on certain sections of the society, that you cannot take water from this type of well. Or maybe they can say that government prohibits that you cannot wear the clothes that you like, or restrictions on certain castes to move within the society. Now, all these examples of restrictions may look very unfair and unjust. Now, how these laws that are actually made by the government, that we have chosen ourselves, how these laws cannot be imposed, or how the powers of the government will get restrained or restricted. See, the grants of these powers to the government is through the constitution, and the constitution only sets the limits to these powers. In a way, government is empowered by the constitution, and government is also restricted by the constitution, by the laws written in the constitution. So, the protection of individual liberty. When we say individual liberty, we are all living in a civilized society. When we say we are living in a civilized society, or we are living in a civil society, we all have certain rights that are entitled to us because we are human beings. That is, right to life, liberty, property. These are certain basic and fundamental rights which cannot be taken away from an individual, from an human being. These are certain basic rights that we have, the basic liberties: freedom of speech, freedom of conscience, freedom of association, freedom to conduct a trade, freedom to do business of our choices. These are certain basic liberties of an individual, and these basic individual liberties should not be intruded by the government, should not be restricted, limited by the government. And how these restrictions cannot be imposed by the government? Because the constitution is empowering the government, and constitution is limiting the powers of the government. So in practice, there are certain basic rights. All the constitutions will have certain rights, certain, like US constitution has bill of rights, Indian constitution has fundamental rights. So these are fundamental rights which cannot be taken away from the citizens. These are the basic rights for every citizens living in that particular country, and they may vary from country to country. Like in India, we have 6 fundamental rights, which have further basic more division of rights. In South Africa, there are rights like a healthy environment is their basic right, right? This basic right is missing in India. So every country have this fundamental rights which may vary from country to country. Now these rights can also be restricted, but how these can be restricted by government is also specified in the constitution. Like in cases of national emergency, these basic rights can be taken away. Now there is fundamental rights against arbitrary arrest, but in our constitution we also have preventive detention, that if you are doing anything that is against the society, or you pose a threat to the existence of the whole society, then government can imprison you under just a threat that you may do that. You have not still done such activity, but they anticipate that you may do that. So your freedom can be taken away, and someone can be put under preventive detention as well. But if a person has to be put under preventive detention, that too is also specified in the constitution. That process has been specified in the constitution. So in practice, these rights can be limited only during national emergency, and constitution clearly specifies the circumstances under which these basic rights, these fundamental rights, these civil rights, these natural rights, these rights can be withdrawn from or taken away, or this individual liberty of a citizen can be taken away. So this is a very important function of the constitution, that it limits the powers of the government. So it empowers the government by giving it certain powers. It also restricts the powers of the government by the laws.